Marjorie Taylor Greene thought she could wing it with outrage until Jasmine Crockett pulled out receipts, stayed calm, and dismantled her claims one by one without ever breaking a sweat. The room was already on edge. Bright lights, C-SPAN cameras rolling. You could feel the tension in the air like a wire pulled too tight. People shifted in their chairs. Phones buzzed quietly under desks. The House Oversight Committee hearing had dragged on for hours, full of the usual political noise, accusations, eye rolls, grandstanding. But then came a pause. Representative Jasmine Crockett was next to speak. She didn't jump in with fire. She didn't need to. She took a sip of water, adjusted the mic, and looked straight across the room, her tone steady, almost casual. "Madam Chair," she began, "before I address the broader issue, I'd like to clarify something that was just said by my colleague from Georgia." Marjorie Taylor Greene looked up, barely concealing her smirk. She leaned back, arms crossed, ready to dismiss whatever was coming next. That's when Crockett calmly opened the binder in front of her. No theatrics, no shaking papers, just precision. "There was a claim just made about misuse of federal funds in the 2020 relief bill," Crockett continued, "and how it allegedly benefited certain radical left organizations." She glanced down briefly, flipped a tab. "That statement is inaccurate." Greene tilted her head, already annoyed. "Oh, come on. We all know where that money went." Crockett didn't flinch. "Actually, we do. I have the distribution breakdown from the Department of Treasury right here. None of the groups you listed received a single dollar of those funds." The room hushed. One or two aides stopped typing. Greene narrowed her eyes. "Well, that's not what the public was told." Jasmine lifted the paper slowly and held it where the cameras could see. "The public was told exactly this. The problem is, not everyone read it. But I did." Now people were listening. Behind Crockett, another representative passed her a folder. She opened it, revealing copies of a Greene fundraising email from 2 years ago. The subject line, "Radicals are stealing your money." The date stamped clearly. "I believe this was sent on March 18th, 2021, Crockett said, her voice low and sharp. "And in it, you make the same claims you just repeated today, despite the fact that federal records available to all of us directly contradict them." Greene's smile was gone. "You're mischaracterizing what I meant," she snapped. "It's not always about technicalities." Crockett raised an eyebrow. "Facts aren't technicalities, they're facts." The back and forth wasn't even heated yet, but you could already tell where this was headed. The room had shifted. Crockett wasn't just making a point, she was building a case, calmly, deliberately, every line more precise than the last. A few rows back, staffers exchanged looks. You could see someone pull out their phone. Livestream watchers started clipping the moment. It wasn't even the peak of the hearing, but something about Crockett's poise made the whole thing feel different. Greene rolled her chair an inch closer to the mic. "I think Americans are tired of being lectured by elites who hide behind fine print." Crockett didn't look away. "Then let's talk plainly. You told them their money was stolen. It wasn't. You told them these groups took it. They didn't. You built outrage off a lie. And now you're upset I brought the receipts?" The silence was loud. Even the chair didn't interject. That said enough. Greene glanced to her left, then back at the camera. "This is what they do. Twist your words, pick through details to distract from the real crisis." Crockett leaned forward. "If the truth distracts you, that's not my fault. That's yours." The clip, just under 2 minutes, would be online within the hour. But in that moment, it was just a room full of people watching someone refuse to get rattled. She wasn't loud. She didn't interrupt. She just laid it all out and let the facts do the damage. But this was only the beginning. Greene hadn't exploded. Greene didn't respond right away. She shuffled the papers in front of her, clearly stalling, glancing toward her aides for a lifeline that wasn't coming. Jasmine Crockett, still seated and unbothered, turned a page in her binder as if she had all the time in the world. Her silence spoke louder than any outburst could have. Representative Logan Price from Idaho leaned forward and asked softly, "Would the Congresswoman from Texas yield for a question?" Without looking at him, Crockett answered, "After I finish this point." That's when she turned the volume up, not in tone, but in precision. There was also a statement made earlier about a so-called plot to funnel relief funds into community organizing groups tied to extremists. She lifted a second document. This is the oversight report from the GAO dated June 2021. It names all major recipients. You'll notice none of the names Greene mentioned are even cited. In fact, she paused, locking eyes with Greene. One of them was actually a subcontractor tied to a Republican-controlled nonprofit out of Mississippi. Now the room reacted. Quiet murmurs, a cough that sounded more like a stifled laugh. Someone near the back jotted a note, then underlined it. Marjorie Taylor Greene interrupted sharply. "That's not what this is about, and you know it." Jasmine finally turned her full attention to Greene. "So what is it about then? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're building talking points on top of each other like a house made of cards. And I'm just holding up a fan." Even the chair had to hide a smile. At this point, Greene couldn't help herself. "I'm sick of Democrats hiding behind these legal documents like they're gospel. People feel the effects. People see what's happening." "Feelings are not evidence," Jasmine replied. "You're talking about how people feel. I'm talking about what the records say. And if you're going to claim millions of taxpayer dollars were misused, you should at least be able to explain where and how. Otherwise, you're just yelling at shadows." That was the turning point. Greene's voice rose an octave. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Sitting there smug, pretending like your community hasn't been wrecked by these same policies you defend." Jasmine looked up, calm, still. "I represent a district in Dallas where people know the difference between being helped and being used. They also know when someone is exploiting their struggles for headlines." Silence again, but not the still kind. This was sharp. Everyone was paying attention. Jasmine continued, gentler now. "We're not up here just to win arguments. We're up here to fix things, but we can't fix what we lie about." Greene leaned forward, nearly pushing into her mic. "You act like you're some saint. You think the people watching don't see right through you?" Jasmine didn't flinch. "They see everything. That's what worries you." And that's when it happened. Greene, clearly rattled, flipped through her notes. Too fast, like she was trying to find something but couldn't. She tapped a page. "This," she said, "this shows one of the groups you mentioned, the Eastwood Resource Center, got money from a subsidiary that's connected to a person who was investigated in 2012 for..." She hesitated, eyes darting. The number of seconds she paused made everything worse. Jasmine looked down, blinked slowly, then turned another page. "Let's clarify that. The Eastwood Resource Center isn't even based in Texas. It's in Lansing, Michigan. And the individual you're referring to wasn't affiliated with that organization until 3 years after the investigation ended. That's not a connection. That's reaching." The backbench broke into quiet murmurs again. Someone dropped a pen. A reporter scribbled furiously. "And just so we're clear," Jasmine said, raising the report again, "Eastwood applied for a local grant, not federal aid. That's a state-level issue, which means, respectfully, it has no place in this hearing unless you're trying to mislead people." Again. Greene glared across the table. "I don't have time to fact-check everything while I'm sitting here." "You had time to write the accusations," Jasmine replied. "Maybe double-checking them before repeating them on national TV would have saved you some embarrassment." It landed like a gut punch. You could feel the hearing shift. Crockett wasn't just defending her position anymore. She was pulling the floor out from under Greene one layer at a time, all without ever raising her voice. But Greene wasn't done. She was only getting louder, and the cracks were starting to show. By now, everyone on that committee, Republican, Democrat, staffer, intern, knew they were watching something spiral. Marjorie Taylor Greene was no stranger to controversy, but this wasn't outrage on her terms. This was unraveling. The camera lights never blinked. Every moment was being captured, streamed, clipped, tweeted. And as Greene fumbled through her notes, Jasmine Crockett leaned back, not smug, just steady. The kind of steady that says, "I'm ready for whatever you try next." One of Greene's aides approached from behind and whispered something in her ear. She nodded, annoyed, flipping back 2 pages in her folder and planting her finger on a highlighted sentence. "This right here," Greene snapped, tapping the page, "shows a donation of $25,000 to a community organization that later endorsed your campaign, Congresswoman." Jasmine didn't even move. "Is that the Urban Relief Collective?" "Yes." "That donation came from a PAC aligned with 5 different candidates," Jasmine replied. 3 of them were Republican. The organization didn't endorse me until 7 months later, and that wasn't a formal endorsement. It was a retweet. A beat passed. Greene squinted, almost confused. You're really out here citing retweets as corruption? Jasmine asked. You do know we can all see your timeline too, right? The audience, both in the room and online, was eating it up. People had already begun posting screen grabs of the exchange. Crockett Clapp's back was climbing. Cable producers in DC newsrooms were editing footage in real time, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, she was losing control on live television. I don't care about your technicalities, Greene hissed. You're good at dodging. Jasmine sat up straight. You keep calling facts technicalities. That's the problem. You're not here to solve anything. You're here to perform. And unfortunately for you, this is one stage where the script doesn't always go your way. Greene opened her mouth to respond, but her mic cut off for a moment. A staffer reset it, creating an awkward gap of silence. Crockett filled the void. You know what's exhausting? She said. People who act outraged, but never bring real solutions. You've made your whole brand about blame, pointing fingers, stirring fear, feeding off division. But when it comes time to work, you have nothing in your hands except recycled outrage and a megaphone. Now the chair had to speak. Let's please maintain decorum, she warned. But it was too late. The back and forth had already become the center of attention. Greene leaned forward again. You think you're the voice of reason? You represent chaos. You represent everything wrong with this country, catering to people who want handouts instead of working hard. That was a mistake. Jasmine didn't shout. She didn't clench her fists. She just exhaled once and said quietly, Say that again. Greene blinked. Say that again. On the record, Jasmine repeated, because what you just did wasn't policy. It wasn't disagreement. It was dog whistle politics with a bullhorn, and I want every working person watching this to hear what you think of them. Greene's mouth moved, but no words came. Crockett pounced, not with anger, but with clarity. Some of us represent communities where people work 3 jobs and still can't afford an ER visit. You stand up here like struggle is a choice. Maybe that's how it looks from your echo chamber, but out here, it's real. She opened her binder again. And while we're on the subject, here's your voting record on workers' protections. Against union rights, against paid family leave, against lowering prescription drug prices. You say people should work hard, but you vote like their lives don't matter after the shift ends. There was no clapping. This wasn't a rally, but people shifted. One representative actually leaned forward, visibly uncomfortable, not at what Jasmine was saying, but at how accurate it all sounded. Greene turned to the chair. I'm being personally attacked. This is inappropriate. The chair looked between them. You've both made strong points. Let's move forward. But Crockett wasn't finished yet. One more thing, she said, lifting a new document. This is a campaign mailer you sent last November, accusing members of this committee of treason for voting on a COVID relief bill. That same bill included funding for rural hospitals, one of which is in your district. They sent you a letter thanking you, mistakenly, before they found out you voted against it. Greene stared, red-faced. Crockett finished. They later retracted the thank you and publicly corrected it. You never did. But Greene still hadn't exploded. That was coming. And when it did, it would hit harder than anyone expected. The chamber wasn't quiet anymore. It was stiff, like people were holding their breath just to see what would happen next. Crockett had taken the gloves off, and not with a yell, but with facts and receipts that were too specific to ignore. Greene, meanwhile, was unraveling fast. You're unbelievable, Greene said, her voice louder than before. I come in here, speak my mind, and you treat me like some kind of criminal. Jasmine blinked. No one's treating you like a criminal. We're treating your statements like what they are, false. And when you say something false on national TV, especially from this committee, there's a responsibility to correct it. That's not personal. That's public service. Greene looked around, searching for support, but even her usual allies weren't rushing in to help. Too risky, too messy, and frankly, too public. The cameras weren't just watching anymore. They were zooming in. You just like playing the victim, Crockett added, because that way you don't have to explain anything. You just accuse, retreat, and blame everyone else for not buying the story. Greene pounded the table once. Don't you dare lecture me about responsibility. You come in here with your smug tone, acting like you're the smartest person in the room. I don't have to be the smartest. Jasmine cut in. I just have to be honest. The chair gave a light gavel tap. Let's try to proceed respectfully. But Crockett wasn't raising her voice. She was just surgical. The people watching this don't want theater. They want answers. They want someone to stop using them as props in some made-for-TV drama. Greene clenched her jaw. People elected me because I tell it like it is. No, Jasmine said. They elected you because you convinced them you were on their side. But they're still waiting on clean water, still waiting on broadband, still waiting on small business loans. And while they're waiting, you're here blaming imaginary boogeymen and yelling at people who brought proof. A pause. You don't tell it like it is, she said. You just say it loud. It was a punch without yelling, a knockout in a whisper. Greene couldn't take it anymore. She raised her voice fully now. This is why people are sick of Washington. You all sit there acting holy while the country falls apart. You don't care about Americans. You care about your image. Crockett didn't even blink. You're screaming about image while staring into a camera. Think about that. For a moment, even the chair looked stunned. You built your platform on outrage, Jasmine continued calmly. But outrage doesn't build roads. It doesn't fund hospitals. It doesn't put books in classrooms. It just makes headlines. And I'm not here for headlines. I'm here to work. Greene shook her head, papers trembling in her hands. You can say all that, but you still stand for a party that wants open borders and lawlessness. Crockett held up another document. My voting record on border funding is public. Want me to read it aloud? Greene laughed, bitter and hollow. You think reading documents makes you real? Makes you connected? No, Jasmine replied. It makes me accountable. Now the crowd was shifting. A few journalists left the room to call editors. Phones were lighting up with buzzwords like explosive, breakdown, and Crockett owns Greene. But back in the chamber, the mood wasn't celebratory. It was tense. The kind of tension you only get when someone's been exposed, and they know it. You want me to apologize for being passionate? Greene asked. No, Jasmine answered. I want you to be accurate. Greene leaned into her mic, one hand shaking just slightly. Keep laughing it up. You people think you're untouchable. I think we're accountable, Crockett said, which is why you're so uncomfortable right now. The chair tapped the gavel again. Both members will direct their comments through the chair and refrain from personal attacks. But it was already past that point. The tension couldn't be walked back with parliamentary language. Not anymore. You've got nothing but catchphrases, Jasmine said. You want to talk policy? Great, let's do it. But if all you're going to do is scream, don't be surprised when people stop listening. Greene stood halfway out of her chair. I represent the real America. Jasmine didn't hesitate. Then start acting like it. But the real explosion was still coming, when Greene would fully lose her composure, and the world would be watching. If there was ever a moment that showed the difference between noise and skill, it was this one. Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on the desk, flipping to the next tab in her binder, as if she were reviewing notes before cross-examination. Her tone stayed even. Her expression never broke. But everything about her presence now said, I'm done playing nice. Let's clarify one more thing, Jasmine said. Earlier, Representative Greene implied that federal funds were funneled into what she called activist cells. Her words, not mine. She also said these groups were involved in election tampering. That's not only inaccurate, it's dangerous. Greene's eyes widened, her lips tightening. Don't twist my words. They're literally in the transcript, Jasmine replied. I printed them. She held up a copy of the morning's session, already highlighted, time-stamped. Greene's quote was right there, word for word. Jasmine read it aloud, slowly. You could feel the committee shift again. When someone reads your own words back to you and you still try to deny them, it's a bad look. You said, and I quote, they're taking pandemic funds and using them to rig local elections through their influence networks. You said that at 10:17 a.m., 37 minutes ago, Jasmine said. Now, I've read the entire fund distribution report, and nowhere in it is there a line item, clause, or even a hint of support for any organization involved in voter operations. Greene scoffed. Yeah, well, we know how these reports are written. It's all coded language. That's the difference between us, Jasmine said, softly but firmly. I don't speak in code. I speak in facts. She opened a fresh manila folder, this one marked with a red tab. This is a sworn statement from the director of one of the nonprofits you accused, she said, dated last month. In it, she explains how every dollar received was used for housing assistance, food delivery, and pandemic response, and that your claims, again, your words, led to multiple threats against her staff. Greene froze. Jasmine didn't press harder. She didn't need to. She's a grandmother, been doing this work for 20 years. She's had to hire private security because someone believed your story and showed up at her door with a baseball bat. The weight of that sentence landed hard. Even a few of Greene's colleagues looked uncomfortable. That's not on me, Greene muttered. It is, Jasmine replied, because when you have a platform, what you say matters. What you choose to amplify matters. And when the facts don't line up, but you push the narrative anyway, that's not public service. That's reckless. Greene gripped the desk edge, knuckles pale. Why are you targeting me? I'm not targeting you, Jasmine said. I'm correcting you. There's a difference. Another shift in the room, this time more visible. A staffer behind the chair nodded quietly. The gallery murmured. A few reporters typed faster. And since you like transparency so much, Jasmine continued, I pulled your campaign filings. 27% of your recent fundraising emails reference the same groups you're accusing today. Those emails raised over $600,000 in under a month. Greene's mouth opened, then closed again. You built your narrative around them, Jasmine said, and now you're back here doubling down on live TV, hoping the same people send you another check. The chair leaned into the mic. Let's maintain focus on the matter at hand. But Jasmine held firm. This is the matter at hand. This is about accountability, Chairwoman. If someone's going to accuse American citizens of fraud, corruption, or treason, they better come with more than a tweet and a microphone. The word treason hit like a rock. I didn't call anyone a traitor, Greene said weakly. You called them enemies of democracy, Jasmine replied, eyes sharp. In a country where people have been shot for less, there was a long, loaded pause, the kind that cuts through noise and hits everyone listening right in the gut. Jasmine softened her voice. You don't get to play with words like that and then wash your hands when someone gets hurt. Silence. Then Jasmine leaned back. Her job was done for now. The documents were laid out, the facts presented. She didn't need to scream. She just needed to remind everyone watching that accountability can still sound calm, but it cuts all the same. But Greene wasn't done lashing out, and what she said next would take the entire room somewhere no one expected. Greene didn't try to answer right away. Her eyes darted around the room searching for backup, maybe from a colleague, maybe from the chair, but no one spoke. The silence wasn't out of respect. It was the kind of silence that settles when even your own side realizes there's no good way out of the corner you backed yourself into. She exhaled hard. You think you're so calm and clever, she muttered, but you're just good at hiding behind paperwork. Crockett didn't respond. She didn't need to. She simply tilted her head like she was waiting for Greene to finish whatever this was about to turn into. You've been coming for me since the start of this hearing, Greene added. You had this all planned. Printing quotes, digging up mailers. You think you're slick. That's when Jasmine finally spoke. No, Congresswoman, I think you're sloppy. A ripple ran through the room. Somebody coughed to hide a laugh. Greene's face flushed. You're calling me sloppy? She barked, standing now, one hand gripping the back of her chair. I have fought for American values since I got here. Crockett leaned forward. Which values? The ones where you call fellow members communists for voting to fund clean water? Or the ones where you spread conspiracy theories about school shootings being staged? The room froze. You could hear pens stop moving. Greene's mouth twisted. That was taken out of context. No, it wasn't, Jasmine said flatly. You said it. It's on tape. It was offensive then, and it still is. You're attacking me. I'm correcting the record, Jasmine replied, her voice controlled but sharper now. You're not being attacked. You're being held accountable. For your words, for your lies, and for the damage they cause. Greene tried to redirect. You're just grandstanding for your little online fans. You want to go viral. Jasmine glanced at the cameras. If truth goes viral, that says more about the truth than it does about me. Now, even some of the Republican members sitting behind Greene looked uncomfortable. But Greene wasn't finished. Her voice grew louder. You're the reason people don't trust this institution. You make everything about race, about gender, about playing victim. That's when Jasmine's expression changed. I don't play victim, she said. I survived being underestimated. I survived being overlooked. I survived sitting through hearing after hearing with people like you, who think being loud means being right. The room held its breath. And I learned, Jasmine continued, that if you stay calm, stay ready, and come with facts, they'll trip over their own lies trying to come for you. Greene slammed her palm on the table. You're a fraud. Crockett didn't even blink. Then prove it. Greene faltered. Right here, right now, Jasmine said. Show me a document, a quote, a vote that supports what you've been claiming all day. Just one. I'll wait. The chair shifted in her seat. Reporters leaned in. Even the aides stopped moving. Greene's hands trembled slightly as she fumbled with her papers. She picked up one page, then another, each one clearly not what she was looking for. Finally, she looked up, eyes glassy with rage. You're not worth my time. That's the first honest thing you've said today, Jasmine replied. And that was it. Greene lost it. You're smug. You're fake. You're a disgrace to Congress, she shouted. The chair gavelled down hard. Order. Representative Greene, you will cease personal attacks immediately or risk being removed from the hearing. Greene looked stunned. Removed? She asked, incredulous. Yes, the chair said calmly. You've been warned twice already. Jasmine didn't look satisfied. She looked steady. This isn't personal, she said to the room. It's institutional. When one of us lies on record, it damages all of us. And when that lie threatens people's safety or their dignity, it has to be called out. Greene sat back down slowly. Her voice dropped to a whisper, picked up only faintly by the mic. You'll regret this. Jasmine paused, eyes locked on her. No, she said, but you might. But what happened after the hearing, what went public, and how the world reacted, that's when everything changed. The hearing wrapped with awkward formality. A few rushed closing statements, the chair's forced call for unity, and a tap of the gavel that felt more like a mercy ending than anything official. But the moment the session ended, the real chaos began. Cameras followed Jasmine as she stood, calmly packing up her binders and organizing her papers. She didn't glance at Greene, didn't nod, didn't gloat. She just kept her head down, focused, like it was any other day on the job. Outside the hearing room, however, nothing was normal. Within minutes, the clip of the exchange, specifically the part where Jasmine said, if truth goes viral, that says more about the truth than it does about me, had been clipped, posted, subtitled, and shared across every social platform. Accounts that never mentioned politics were sharing it. Teenagers on TikTok, moms on Facebook, even military veterans on Reddit. It was everywhere. And then came the duets, the edits, the replays. That one quote became a kind of rally cry. Memes had already started popping up with Crockett's face on a courtroom-style background. Someone even edited her binder into a flaming sword in a fan art reel. Meanwhile, Marjorie Taylor Greene was nowhere to be found. Reporters had gathered outside the Capitol building, waiting for any comment from Greene's team. Her press secretary gave a brief, defensive statement. She was ambushed in a highly orchestrated smear campaign designed to humiliate her. We will be filing a formal complaint regarding the conduct of Representative Crockett. But no one was buying it. On cable news, talking heads leaned in. Conservative anchors tried to shift the narrative, some blaming the committee, others accusing Crockett of playing dirty. But even among Greene's usual defenders, there was hesitation. One clip from a Fox affiliate caught attention after a guest analyst said, I don't always agree with Crockett's politics, but that was the cleanest takedown I've ever seen in a congressional hearing. She didn't yell. She didn't insult. She just dismantled everything. In Dallas, back in Crockett's district, her office phone rang nonstop. Staffers fielded calls from supporters, reporters, even celebrities, asking for comment. Someone forwarded her a video of Gabrielle Union quoting her binder line during a panel talk. And then came the podcast invites, interview requests, live appearances. But Crockett didn't rush to the spotlight. She declined every live interview that night, instead opting to release a 2-minute statement. I'm not here to go viral. I'm here to serve the people who sent me to Congress. If that service means standing up to misinformation, then I'll keep doing it. with facts, not noise. It was measured, professional, but the internet didn't care about the restraint. They wanted more. A political YouTuber broke down the entire hearing, calling it a masterclass in composure under fire. Another ran side-by-side footage of Greene making her accusations, followed by Jasmine calmly correcting them one by one. The title? This is what happens when you come unprepared to a fact fight. But behind the scenes, the pressure was growing. The House Ethics Committee received 3 formal complaints, 2 from Greene's allies, 1 from an outside group, claiming Jasmine's comments were intentionally inflammatory. None of them mentioned the documents she presented. None disputed the facts. They just didn't like how it looked. And it looked bad. For Greene. Her team rushed to reclaim control of the narrative, setting up a sit-down with a friendly network. But even the edited version of the interview couldn't hide the fact that she was dodging basic questions. When asked why she repeated claims proven false, she deflected. There's more going on behind the scenes than people realize. The reporter pressed her. Like what? Greene hesitated. That's not for me to say. The clip went viral. Again. Not because it was compelling, but because it showed the contrast so clearly. On one side, someone with facts, composure, and evidence. On the other, someone grasping for talking points that didn't stick anymore. But Crockett wasn't done making waves, and what she said in her first interview days later gave the country something even bigger to think about. 3 days after the hearing, the buzz hadn't slowed. If anything, it had grown louder. The moment had officially moved beyond political circles. It was now being dissected on daytime talk shows, debated on morning radio, and quoted by comedians during late-night monologues. Everyone had something to say, but the tone was shifting, and not in Greene's favor. Crockett's district office in Dallas reported an unprecedented number of emails, calls, and handwritten letters. Some came from her constituents. Many came from people who didn't even live in Texas. Retired school teachers in Idaho, veterans in Ohio. A single dad in Arizona who said, I watched you stay calm while someone tried to break you. You made me believe again. The word that kept coming up was dignity. Meanwhile, inside the Capitol, things were tenser than usual. Some of Greene's allies started to quietly distance themselves. A few skipped her press event. One House member, caught on a hot mic, said, She blew it, man. Should have just shut up after the first correction. Another reportedly told an aide, Crockett dragged her with the calm of a judge and the accuracy of a sniper. Greene, however, went in the opposite direction. She doubled down. She held a town hall event in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where she claimed that Crockett's team had coordinated with the media to set her up and accused unnamed figures of targeting her because she speaks for the silent majority. But the turnout was thinner than usual, and the questions from the audience weren't softball. One woman, probably in her 60s, stood up and asked, Why didn't you just answer her questions? That would have shut her down. Greene fumbled through a response about media bias and deep state intimidation. It didn't land. Not this time. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett finally agreed to appear on a Sunday morning interview show. No panel, no split screen, just her, seated calmly, speaking with a former journalist turned host. The first question was blunt. Congresswoman, were you expecting that moment to go viral? Jasmine smiled faintly. No, I expected to be prepared. That's my job. And when she raised her voice, slammed the desk. I've worked in courtrooms, Jasmine said. People don't scare me just because they get loud. The host paused. There are people who said you humiliated her. I corrected her, Jasmine replied. And if that correction embarrassed her, then maybe she needs to take more care in what she says. It was the kind of answer that resonated because it didn't sound rehearsed. It sounded lived in. The host moved on. What do you think this moment means for Congress, for public trust? Jasmine's tone shifted slightly. It means we've reached a point where telling the truth calmly is seen as revolutionary. That's a problem. She looked directly into the camera. We can't keep lowering the bar for public discourse. We can't keep saying both sides when one side is lying and the other is bringing documents. If we want better, we have to demand better. Clips from the interview circulated almost immediately. Hashtags like Facts Matter and #Crockett was ready started trending. Political podcasts replayed the segment on loop, and even political opponents acknowledged the moment's gravity. One conservative columnist wrote, I disagree with Jasmine Crockett on almost every issue, but I'd rather sit across from her in a debate than a dozen screaming heads. At least she reads the bill before she talks about it. Meanwhile, an unexpected ripple effect began. Voter registration in Crockett's district spiked. Young people started showing up to campaign events. Local news anchors began referring to her by first name, like she was already a household name. But in the background, Greene's team tried a different tactic. A leaked email showed they were contacting donors claiming Jasmine had violated committee decorum and that Greene had been set up by radical operatives. The email was quickly mocked online for being full of half-truths and typos, including a sentence where Crockett's name was spelled 3 different ways. Even some conservative strategists quietly admitted it's a bad strategy to attack someone for being too prepared. But the real story wasn't just in the politics. It was in the way the public responded. People wanted something different. They were tired of chaos, tired of noise, tired of being insulted and talked down to. Jasmine Crockett hadn't just checked a colleague. She'd reminded people that truth still had a place in politics. But what she said in a follow-up interview, one that was never planned to be public, would give this story its real heart. A week after the hearing, Jasmine Crockett walked into a small recording studio inside a community center in Garland, Texas. No cameras, no makeup team, no press. Just her, a local podcast host named Angela Royce, and 2 microphones. Angela had been running her show, People First, for over 4 years, mostly interviews with nurses, school workers, and small business owners. But when Jasmine's office agreed to a sit-down, Angela cleared the whole week's schedule. She thought it would be a quiet, local conversation about Crockett's district and long-term goals. It turned into something else entirely. Halfway through the conversation, Angela said, "I watched the clip, like 3 times. You were just calm, like ice cold. I would have snapped the second she called me fake." Jasmine let out a small laugh. "That's the thing. She wanted me to snap. That's the trap." Angela leaned forward. "So how'd you not take the bait?" There was a pause. Not awkward, just full. "My grandma used to say, 'Don't fight in the mud with people who live in it. They'll beat you every time because they're at home there,'" Jasmine said. "I've spent too many years in real rooms with real pain to waste time playing pretend with people who don't even bring notes to a hearing." Angela nodded. "But you didn't just ignore her. You corrected her. Publicly. That takes guts." Jasmine looked directly at her. "It takes care." Angela blinked. "Care?" "Yeah. Care for the people watching," Jasmine said, "because when someone lies on that mic, they're not just lying to me. They're lying to a single mom in Tulsa who's already working 3 shifts and still can't afford daycare. They're lying to an old veteran in Bakersfield who hears rigged election and thinks their vote didn't matter." Angela didn't say anything for a second. She just pressed the space bar to pause the recording and looked across the table. "Do you want this part on or off record?" she asked. "On," Jasmine said without hesitation. So Angela hit record again. "I wasn't trying to humiliate her," Jasmine continued. "I was trying to protect people from fear, from misinformation, from letting someone with a microphone make them feel powerless." Angela's voice cracked a little. "You think that landed?" Jasmine shrugged. "Doesn't matter. What matters is I didn't stay quiet. I've had too many folks in my district say they feel invisible, like no one speaks their language. I didn't do that hearing for headlines. I did it because facts are my language, and it's time more people started speaking it." That quote, "Facts are my language, and it's time more people started speaking it," would later be picked up by major outlets, even printed in The Atlantic. But in the moment, it was just 2 women talking in a soundproof room. Angela finished the episode with a simple thank you, and Jasmine left without fanfare. No crowd waiting outside, no press hounding her car, just a quiet walk to the parking lot under a Texas sky, binder tucked under her arm. But the podcast blew up. It aired 3 days later and quickly became the most downloaded episode in the show's history. People connected not just with Jasmine's poise during the hearing, but with the why behind it. Her restraint wasn't strategy. It was discipline. Her facts weren't flashy. They were her armor. Listeners flooded Angela's inbox. One email from a high school teacher in Kansas read, "I played your interview in class today. My students didn't look at their phones for 15 minutes. That hasn't happened all year." And for Jasmine, it wasn't about praise. It was about proving a point. That standing your ground doesn't mean raising your voice. and that defending your community doesn't always require a slogan. Sometimes it just means showing up prepared. That podcast, small, local, quiet, did what none of the headlines could. It humanized her. It pulled the story out of politics and into people's homes. And while Greene was still making noise in front of the cameras, demanding investigations and calling herself a victim of political sabotage, Jasmine kept working. Committee meetings, district visits, policy reviews. She didn't chase the spotlight. She just made sure, when it found her again, she'd still have her facts ready. But before the moment passed entirely, Jasmine had one more thing to say, and it came during an event that no one expected to go viral. 2 weeks after the hearing, Jasmine Crockett was invited to speak at a high school civics assembly in Bismarck, North Dakota. Not exactly her usual crowd, and not her home district either. But the invitation had come from a teacher who'd played that podcast episode for his AP government class. His students wanted to hear from her directly. The gym was modest, folding chairs in neat rows, students half interested, half distracted by buzzing phones in their pockets. A few teachers lingered near the bleachers, no stage lights, no reporters, just a handheld mic and a school banner that read, "Your voice matters." Jasmine wore a plain navy blazer, no entourage, no speech in hand. She stepped up to the mic and looked out at the group, juniors and seniors, a few shy but curious. She smiled and started with a simple question. "Anyone here ever been lied about?" A few hands shot up, nervous laughs. "Ever been told you weren't smart enough or good enough or that you didn't belong somewhere?" More hands. "Yeah," she nodded. "Me too." She paused. A few weeks ago, someone with a big platform stood in a room full of cameras and said things that weren't just wrong. They were dangerous, not to me personally, but to the truth. You could see some students sit up straighter. "So, what do you do when that happens?" she continued. "When someone tries to turn the truth inside out in front of everyone?" She didn't pace. She didn't raise her voice. "You stay calm. You get your facts right. And you speak like somebody out there needs to hear the truth, even if they don't know it yet." Now the room was quiet, not stiff, engaged. Jasmine glanced at the back of the gym where a teacher stood recording on an old camcorder. "Because one of the biggest lies we get told is that we have to yell to be heard," she said, "that we have to meet volume with volume. But I'm telling you, clarity cuts through louder than noise ever could." She paused again. "That hearing didn't matter because I went viral. It mattered because it reminded people that you don't have to match someone's chaos to correct them. You just have to be ready, prepared, and anchored in truth." By now, phones were out. Not for distraction, but for recording. A few students whispered, "She's good." Jasmine scanned the faces in front of her, teenagers trying to make sense of a country that often feels like it's spinning too fast. "I'm not perfect. I miss things. I get frustrated. But I know who I'm doing this for," she said. "I'm doing it for people who don't have the luxury of yelling and being heard. People who have to be twice as prepared just to be believed once." The gym fell still. "And if you remember one thing from me today, let it be this," she added. "Don't mistake calm for weakness. Don't mistake preparation for luck. And never let someone rewrite reality just because they say it with confidence." The applause started with the teachers. Then the students joined in. It wasn't thunderous, but it was sincere. Later that afternoon, a 2-minute clip from that assembly would quietly make its way onto Twitter, then TikTok, then Facebook. It showed Jasmine standing in front of that "Your Voice Matters" banner, saying that one line, "Clarity cuts through louder than noise ever could." People shared it, quoted it, wrote it in captions. Not because it was political, but because it was simple, honest, human. And that's what this story had become. It wasn't about Crockett versus Greene. It wasn't even about a single hearing. It was about how people react when they're backed into a corner. Some throw punches, others pull out proof. Some deflect, others focus. Some scream, others sit still and speak with purpose. In the end, Greene faded into the noise she helped create. But Crockett, binder in hand, walked through it like a surgeon with a spotlight, not chasing it, but not hiding from it either. And that's what made all the difference. So if this meant something to you, if you believe facts still matter and that truth can still win, take a second to subscribe, share the story, and make sure more voices like Jasmine Crockett's keep getting heard. Not because they're loud, but because they're right.